Welcome into a brand new episode of the Whole Story Podcast. On today's episode, Jeff Levering, radio play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Brewers. Jeff, how are you holding up? This is just such a crazy time in the world, and especially in the sports world. And health is the number one priority during this time period. How are you holding up?
We're holding up just like everybody else. I think everybody's just kind of sitting on their hands and waiting to be told when to go. We're all at this stop sign and this stoplight that's flashing red in the most bright colors that we can, and we're just hoping for that light to turn yellow and then eventually green. And once it turns green, we're all going to be set to go, and it's going to be baseball season. It'll be basketball. It'll be football, and everybody else will resume. And we've got something positive to talk about once again.
Mm-hmm. Now, this podcast is hopefully a breakaway from what's happening in the world, and also to provide listeners to a look into what the career insight of sports broadcasting is. I think a lot of people don't realize what exactly goes into this career in different ways. And of course, for you, I think the number one thing is to let the viewers know the difference between radio and TV. There's two different beasts, I guess you could call it. Radio play-by-play for baseball is completely different from TV play-by-play.
Yeah, it really is. It's two totally different styles, and basically, as the radio voice, you're describing everything in perfect action, and you're the eyes, you're the ears. Nobody knows anything until you tell them, and it's more of a relaxed. You think about the radio broadcast, you think about our older folks, our grandparents and parents that are out in the yard and doing yard work, and they've got the game on in the background, especially during the summer months and whatnot. And it's a way to pass the time, especially in baseball. So you think of more relaxed. This is just my way of life, and I'm going to be told how I should be ingesting this, almost like reading a book. And then on the television side, you're just providing the highlights. You're kind of filling in. They get the main portrait, and you're just filling in the brush strokes. I'm not an artist, clearly, but actual painted strokes and whatnot, I draw stick figures. But basically, I'm the guy that on television, if I'm doing a college basketball game or a football game, I'm giving you as little detail and making sure that my partner thrives as much as possible, and I can set him up to give the greater details on what's going on, and I'm just kind of giving the fine brush strokes. But they are two totally different animals, and I was trained on the television side and never did a radio broadcast until I got my first job in the minor leagues. So I'm learning a whole new medium. I'm learning how to do things on the fly. I have to negotiate radio contracts with stations through teams, and these are all things that I had to learn. It was, okay, you got the job and go ahead. So just trial by fire, and you get into it and keep your head above water as best as possible.
You just talked about earlier in your response about setting up your broadcast partner for success, because obviously you want the most successful every single night that you're calling a game. When you first started off in the minors, single A advanced affiliate with the Dodgers, did you have a partner, or were you by yourself?
I was by myself for the first 3 years of my broadcast career, and I was really thankful for that, because it allowed me to find who I was as a broadcaster and find my own voice. And having a radio station where nobody could hear it unless you were in the parking lot of the station, and it was all Spanish all the time in Rancho Cucamonga, I was allowed to make mistakes. And it was before Twitter came into play, and people were picking apart every single word. And a guy like you, Alex, who's coming into this thing, everything is going to get picked apart. And I almost feel bad for the young guys that are coming through in this industry, because you have nowhere to hide. Everything is out there. Whereas I was able to hide for my first few years, and I was really thankful for it, because I could make a lot of mistakes and be pretty stupid with what I was doing. But for the fact of the matter of working with a partner and whatnot, I didn't work with a partner on baseball until I got to Springfield, which was in Double-A. So my fourth year of broadcasting, beginning of 2010 season, I had a partner at home, and then I'd be by myself on the road. And then when I got to Pawtucket 3 years after that, starting in 2013, I had a partner every game. So I was kind of led into working with a broadcast partner on the radio side and switching off innings and not doing all nine, and having an inning off to catch your breath or use the restroom or whatever it is. But those first few years, I was really thankful that I was able to do it for myself. That way I could learn who I was and be confident with who I was, because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have worked very well with a partner.
Confidence is key in this industry. And actually, you didn't really learn that you wanted to do play-by-play until college when you called a softball game. And before that, did you have some sort of inclination that you wanted to be in sports, or did you kind of figure that out as well when you found out that you wanted to do play-by-play in sports?
I think I got the itch, certainly, to do play-by-play when I did that softball game. So it wasn't until my junior year of college that I did that. But I was doing public address for every sport except for baseball because I played. And my whole dream was to play Major League Baseball, but being 5'10" and who could hit a little bit and didn't have a position defensively, was kind of going all over the place. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I go to a Division III school, and I'm not going to play professional baseball. It's just I was smart that way, and I knew I wanted to be in broadcasting. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured I'd find out as soon as I got there. So I end up doing the public address. I'm having fun, and more than anything, that taught me how to pronounce names and say people's names right and get them right, and that was a really important lesson to learn, of course, and you make your contacts that way. And then in the broadcast department, they had a multi-camera television class, and most of those were studio shows. So I was a producer, I was a director, I was a AD. I'm doing all these different jobs, learning everything that I could, which was really smart on my part. And then they decided to do a sporting event, and they didn't have anybody in our program that wanted to do sports. So I guess I was that guy. They didn't have any other options, so they threw me on. And I go back and I watch that tape, and first my sideburns are down here. I probably hadn't got a haircut in a few months or whatnot. So it just was a tough look first. And then trying to find my rhythm was another thing too that I had to learn quickly. But as soon as the game was over, my producer of the game came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, you were pretty good. Is this something you want to try and pursue?" And I went, "Well, I had a lot of fun, but I'm going to need to really figure this thing out." So I ended up figuring it out, thankfully. But that's really when I got the itch, my junior year of college. And I said, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this happen.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you start out in the business, we were talking before we started that some people might think you graduate college and then you get a job, let's say, with the Brewers right out of the first day that you graduated. That's not the case. And you have to pay your dues and to learn. If you're a minor league broadcaster, your job is not just calling baseball games. It's calling baseball games and then everything else, basically. Where you have to learn how to pay dues. What was one moment that you maybe had that question, do I really want to do this? And then how did you overcome that question to ultimately get to where you are today?
I don't know if I ever questioned whether or not this was the right path for me. There were some ups and downs, no doubt about it. I mean, there was a time where I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue to call baseball games. After my last year in Rancho Cucamonga in 2009, the team went through an organizational change and an ownership change. And with that, they brought in a new broadcaster, but never bothered to tell me. I had heard from a friend of mine who was working in another league and said, "Hey, we just got an email from one of our broadcasters." He said, "Hey, I'm just letting you know that I'm leaving and I'm going to be the broadcaster of the Quates. So good luck." And I get this email from my buddy and goes, "Hey, so I didn't know you were leaving. Where are you going?" And I said, "I didn't know I was leaving either." So that's how I found out that I wasn't coming back to Rancho. And then, so that ended up being the Springfield job, and we ended up trading places as broadcasters. But as soon as I got that information, I sent my stuff straight to Springfield, and it ended up working out. But if I don't get that job going into 2010, I don't know if I'm broadcasting. What are my next steps? Where do I go? I was an intern at Fox and worked there for 2 years in Southern California before I got my job in minor league baseball. So there was a 2-year transition window after I graduated college before I got into the minors. But after the season in 2009, there was a long time where I didn't know where I was going. And for about 2.5 months between jobs as it was, I was really unclear with where I was, my career was going. Was I going to go back to the production side? Was I going to transition from being on-air talent into being a producer or an associate producer or doing something else. And had I not got that Springfield job, I don't know how my career turns out. I might not be talking to you about this type of stuff right now, Alex, to be honest with you. So things worked out the right way. And my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, decided to move from a 9-iron away from the Pacific Ocean out to the middle of nowhere in Springfield, Missouri. And now we're married with a couple of kids. So if I don't get that job, do we stay together? There are a lot of different things and a lot of different paths that this life takes us on. But I never questioned whether it was the right thing for me. I always knew that I had the drive, and I always wanted to get better. I'm still trying to get better each and every day and each and every year and meeting new people and different experiences. But I never questioned the industry itself. It was just the opportunities and where those opportunities were going to come.
When you mentioned just the unknown that you were faced early on in your career, did you have, obviously you have to be well-diverse in the sports industry to stay above the competition, obviously, even though it's not exactly advertised, but you have to, how am I different from the person sitting next to me that may be more talented than me, and then the person to the left of me? When you had that unknown of what was next, what sort of inkling did you have in the back of your mind that, well, I really enjoy broadcasting, but what's something else I also enjoy that could kind of fill that void?
That's a really good question. And for me, trying to get better is always my goal. And I've always felt this pressure from within myself that I've been inadequate in my broadcasting career, because it wasn't something that came naturally to me early. I always just kind of goofed around with it and had fun in the dugout and when I was playing, and people said, "Oh, you might be pretty good at this." And then I gave it a shot. And it took a long time to find my actual voice. And I wouldn't say that I became super comfortable with it until maybe my 5th year. And working with a partner was very helpful because I worked with some people that were flat out better than I was. And that pushed me to get better and to prepare better and to be the best version of myself that I could be. And you mentioned before about wearing a lot of different hats. I mean, I'd never done media relations before, so I'm learning all these things. I've never sold anything before, and I'm selling corporate sponsorships to people and asking them for $10,000 a year for putting a hot dog sign out on the billboards. So I've never done any of those things before, but because I'm so competitive, and I was competitive when I was a player, that always drove me to be better. And even during that time when I wasn't working, I wasn't looking for that, how am I going to get a leg up on person X or person Y? Mm-hmm. Frankly, I got lucky. And you got to be lucky in this industry. You got to know people. Like I told you, my first job in Rancho Cucamonga, the only reason I filled in the summer of 2006 before I got the full-time job was because I knew the public address announcer. The guy that I did that softball game with was the PA guy in Rancho, and he told the bosses, "Hey, listen, this guy could fill in for you, give him a call." So that's how I got that opportunity in 2006. Guy in 2007 leaves, I apply for it, new assistant general manager's in town. That assistant general manager played for the same college coach that recruited me. So he calls him and says, "Is this guy okay, or is he kind of a lame-o?" "Oh, he's okay." "All right, well, let's hire him." That's how I got my job in Rancho Cucamonga. First minor league job, full-time. That's how I got my job. Job in Springfield I got because we swapped, basically, and they thought it would be a fun PR story. And I mean, I had a pretty good tape, and I think I set myself apart, but a lot of it was, oh my gosh, they're trading places, so we're going to get him and a bucket of balls and some sunflower seeds. And then I got my job in Pawtucket because I knew the guy that was leaving, in Aaron Goldsmith. We were in the Texas League together, so he was going to Seattle. They were hiring to be his partner. He ends up leaving, so then they're hiring 2 people. I ended up getting that job, and he put in a good word for me. So it was making those relationships and being super lucky with the opportunities. I'm not saying that was all it was. I obviously had to be able to hold a conversation and do my job, but a lot of it was just the connections.
You talked about, again, not basically being complacent. And at what moment do you have now? You got to the big leagues. You're an MLB broadcaster for the Milwaukee Brewers. How can you still push yourself to not become complacent and to still learn every single day, even when you kind of got to where you are and have worked the last 10, 15 years to get to this point?
For me, I'm really lucky because when I go to work, I get to sit next to a Hall of Famer in Bob Uecker, who's going into year number 50, just being with the Brewers. So if that doesn't push you to be on your best every single day, especially when you're at home, then nothing will. And for me, I get to learn a lot just from sitting with him and talking with him and having dinner with him and just having a relationship with him where we can text back and forth at a moment's notice. And yeah, he's 86 and still text messages, and it's great. And having dinners with him, some of the dinners are where I learn more than being on the air with him, because of the way that he tells stories and the different layers that he goes into. That drives me to be better. It drives me to be the best version of myself, because I'm working with him. And when he tosses to me for the third inning, maybe that's the first time that I've said anything that day. I'll toss it to him for the play-by-play. Here's Bob in the first. And maybe I don't talk until the third, because I don't have to, unless I'm going to add something or pick up or Bob asks me a question. So working with him is unbelievable, and that drives me to be better. And even on the television side, the Brewers are so lucky to have a guy like Brian Anderson, who does Turner Sports and the NBA and MLB playoffs and all-star events for the NBA too, and college March Madness, and Matt LePay, who's the voice of the Wisconsin Badgers. They're in the booth next to us. So having those two guys do television broadcasts, have Bob to my right, who's the lead guy, and then I'm the lead on the road, definitely pushes me to be better. I want to be on par with those guys. Am I there? No chance. I'm not there. But just to be in the conversation and to be in the stable of broadcasters, and how lucky we are in southeastern Wisconsin and the state of Wisconsin with the broadcasters that we have. I mean, it's second to none. If that doesn't push you to be better, then nothing ever will.
Jeff, take me back. When was the first time that you met Bob Uecker, and what was that experience like?
The first time I met him was right after New Year's. No, sorry, take that back. It was right before Christmas of 2014. My son was just over 2 months old, and we were in California visiting my parents for Christmas. And I was interviewing for the job, and I learned that I was one of the finalists. And the Brewers said, "You got one more interview, and you got to go. We're going to fly you down to Arizona, and you're going to have dinner with Bob." And I went, all right, no pressure. I'm just going to have dinner with Bob Uecker and his wife, and this should be fun. We'll see how this goes, and make sure I don't fall on my face. So it was December 23rd, because it was Christmas Eve the next day, and I flew home that day. So I go have dinner, I get in the car, and it takes me to Don and Charlie's, and he's got his booth, and I'm sitting in this booth, and I show up at the reception area, and I say, "Hey, I'm here to see Bob Uecker," and they say, "Oh yeah, he's already sitting down." And I got there 15 minutes early, because you got to be early. He goes, "Yeah, he's been here for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. I went, "Oh God, I'm late. This sucks. I've already made a bad impression because I'm showing up late." So I sat down. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I'm late." He goes, "No, I got the time messed up, so don't worry about it." So I sit down with him and his wife, and over my shoulder, there's a picture of Bud Selig on a $1 bill. And here's a picture of Bob Uecker on a motorcycle. And, he's got his own table. Conversation's going really well. And about 5-10 minutes in, we got our drink orders in. And lo and behold, Bud Selig himself walks around the corner. Right. So I'm sitting here. I'm still trying to get my legs to have feeling in them because I'm having this dinner with Bob and his wife. And Bud comes around the corner, and Bob is the only person who could ever get away with calling him Al. So he says, "Hey, Al, how are you? Good to see you." "Hey, Bobby, good to see you. What's going on?" He goes, "Hey, I want to introduce you to Jeff. He's going to be working with us next year." And I went, "Okay, good to meet you, Mr. Commissioner. This is great." And I didn't have the job. I'd never had any confirmation that I had the job or anything. That for all I knew, this was my last interview. So that's within the first 5 minutes of our conversation. Met Tracy Ringlesby that day. He was wearing a 10-gallon hat. He wouldn't remember, but it was fun to meet him. And then so we're finishing up our dinners, about a 3-hour long dinner, and it was a great conversation. He spent 80% of the time talking. I spent about 20% of the time talking. I was totally fine with it. So we're getting up to leave, and he's waiting for his car and at the valet, and he says, "So when are we going to see you next? Couple weeks, right? Brewers on deck." And I went, "Maybe. I don't know. I don't really have the job yet, but sure." He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll make a phone call, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Don't worry. Thanks for coming to have dinner with me." And I went, "Okay, this feels pretty good." So I had to hang on that night and then fly home, and I had to hang on that for a full week because I didn't hear from the Brewers until New Year's Day of 2015 that they were going to offer me the job. So that was the first time I ever met Bob, and from then on we've had a really good relationship. He's got a great relationship with my kids now, with my wife, with all the broadcasters' families, and it all started that night when he basically told me I had the job and I had no idea.
What was your favorite on-air moment with Bob?
There's too many of them. I mean, we have moments where we are just laughing so hard that we're crying. And for me, I can go back to a nondescript game in June or July of last year. Cincinnati Reds, I think it was a Thursday, the Brewers are getting blown out, and Bob starts telling the story about traveling for an exhibition game from spring training to El Paso, Texas. And he decides that he wants to catch, and he dyes his hair black, and he's just having fun when he puts all his shoe polish in his hair. And we start talking about El Paso, and then he starts singing the song El Paso. And I had never heard the song. I was not a big country music fan growing up, and I didn't know the song El Paso. So I start researching the lyrics as he's singing it, and we basically dissected the song of El Paso for the last 3 innings of this blowout game. And we were just having a blast with it and laughing, and a gal named Rosita, and we were just having so much fun, and we were laughing. He tells great stories about the umpires that he worked with. Jocko Conlon is one who is not a very big guy. He's a smaller person. And for his first major league at-bat, Bob talks about how he takes the first pitch for a strike. He takes his second pitch for a strike. He looks back at Jocko and he says, "Nah, I don't agree with that call." He goes, "Well, you know, that was a strike. The next one is too." So he tells that story all the time. So we have fun with Jocko Conlon. And I mean, he always tries to make us laugh so hard that we cry and that we can't hold our stuff together. And it's happened to me so many times where we're about ready to get it back from break, and he'll just say something in my ear that's inappropriate or funny, that's an inside joke. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to ride this one out, and hopefully I'll make it through. And most of the time I don't.
Now, obviously, this career of broadcasting, it's all about the reps, but it's also getting advice from people that you work with. What is something that you picked up throughout the years that you have taken away from any broadcaster, it doesn't have to be Bob, that you took away and was like, I'm going to utilize this information to make myself a better broadcaster?
So two really big pieces of advice that I got from two different people. One was Steve Physiak, who does the Royals now. He was at the Angels at the time when I worked at Fox. He was kind of the guy that piqued my interest in doing play-by-play to begin with. He spoke to one of my classes, and I took him and his daughter, who was looking to go to Chapman University, where I went to school. I took them on a little campus tour, and I volunteered for it. So I got a nice relationship with Steve. So I got to sit behind him when I was an intern and a production assistant, and he always used to harp on be prepared, always be prepared. Go into every single game like it's Game 7 of the World Series, even though it's not, and always prepare for a 4.5-hour game and hope that it's 2. So I've always kind of taken that to heart, and always err on the side of too much preparation, and hopefully I don't have to use 3/4 of the stuff that I've prepared for. And the other one is from Brian Anderson, and I lean in because I have it written down right here on this piece of paper, and I have terrible handwriting. But every single broadcast I go into, BA always says, don't forget the 3 S's. Don't forget the 3 S's. Having a combination of your silence, your statistics, and your storytelling. Go back and forth between the 3. If you feel like you're being too quiet, maybe tell a story. If you're telling too many stories, maybe throw a few stats in there. If you're stats heavy, maybe go back to your storytelling. And if you're talking too much, just shut up. So I've always taken the 3 S's near and dear to my heart, whether I'm doing radio or television.
Right.
and allowing the game to breathe, because people, at the end of the day, if you're doing radio, you're describing it, but heck, people just want to hear the crowd sometimes, and they will speak louder than anything you're ever going to say. So those are two really big pieces of advice that when young broadcasters talk to me, or if I'm giving advice, those are the two ones that I always harp on. Always be prepared, and remember your 3 S's.
Now, Jeff, this is my favorite part of the interview. It's a fast 5 quick round. It's 5 quick questions, and you have how long to take to answer them. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
What is your favorite zoo animal?
Hippopotamus.
All right. Do you collect anything?
I used to collect baseball cards, not anymore. My son took it over.
What would be a celebrity or person you would love to meet for a cup of coffee?
I would love to meet Matt Damon and tell him the story about how someone in Boston thought I was him, and I signed a coaster as Matt Damon as he was filming the movie The Departed. Someone thought I was Matt Damon, and I signed a coaster.
If you could join any music group, which one would you join?
Dave Matthews Band.
That's a good one. And of course, right now, a lot of debates happening. Favorite sports movie of all time?
The Natural.
That's an underrated one, I would say. Very underrated.
I agree, and probably not one you're going to get, but I watch it the day before every single opening day, and even did it this year when there was no opening day. I've been doing that since I was 5 with my dad, and then we had all 3 generations with my dad, myself, and my son this year. First time. So that's one we always do.
Jeff, my last question for you. What has been your proudest career moment up to this moment in time?
Oh, man, there've been a lot of them. I mean, just getting to where I am, and making my major league debut in Detroit in 2015 on a cold May day. That's definitely up there as a career highlight. Being able to call playoff baseball at the major league level has been awesome. To do a Game 7 of the NLCS, Game 163 in 2018 was up there too. Those are definitely career highlights. I'd like to do some other things in the future, but you're always striving to be better. But those 3, my big league debut, and then Game 163, and then Game 7 of the NLCS. Those would probably be my top 3.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. Where can all the listeners follow you on social media when the baseball season happens this year?
Yeah, you got it, man. Jay Levering 4 is the Twitter handle, and I come up with some crazy stuff. So hope everybody enjoyed it. Alex, the sky's the limit for you, man. Nice job.